It was one of those nights when silence doesn't feel empty. It feels alive. The kind that breathes beside you, whispers in the corners, and waits for something to break it. The clock on the microwave blinked 1:58 a.m., and the hum of the refrigerator was the only heartbeat left in the house. I sat at the kitchen counter, the same spot where Lena used to talk about her day, feet curled under her on the bar stool, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Now it was just me, a cold mug of coffee, and the faint reflection of a man I barely recognized. My name's Aaron Cole, architect by profession, fool by circumstance. The house I designed for us was built around light. Open windows, warm spaces, a home meant for laughter. But lately, it felt like the walls absorbed her secrets. Every corner of this place still smelled like her perfume. Amber and something faintly citrus. Only now it reeked of absence. She'd said she had a corporate dinner that evening. "Don't wait up," she'd smiled, slipping into that navy dress. The one she once said she bought for me, but hadn't worn around me in months. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there's a moment in every marriage where trust becomes an act of self-harm. My phone buzzed once. A message from a friend who didn't sleep either. "Still working late?" It read. I didn't reply. My eyes were glued to the small red dot on the rideshare map. Lena's location. She didn't know I could still see it. A while back, she'd linked her corporate app to my account after her phone crashed before a meeting. I'd forgotten about it, until the trust started cracking like old plaster. Tonight, the dot had moved not toward home, but away from it. A quiet, steady line heading toward the Riverstone Suites downtown. The same hotel where her company hosted client mixers. The same one her boss, Carter Hayes, always seemed to book for business. I should have looked away, but I didn't. The thing about betrayal is, once you suspect it, you start collecting proof like oxygen. I zoomed in. The car stopped at the hotel entrance. Then nothing. No movement for nearly half an hour. When it finally did move again, it wasn't toward home. It was toward a neighborhood 15 minutes south, his. That was the moment I stopped pretending not to know. I leaned back, staring at the black window pane reflecting the hollow shape of my face. The man looking back wasn't angry. He was cold, measured. Architects don't demolish without blueprints. A few minutes later, my phone lit up with a new text. "Phone died earlier. Sharing a ride home. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you." Those two words looked wrong, like they'd been written by a stranger borrowing her mouth. Lena never texted short sentences. She wrote paragraphs. She overused emojis, exclamation marks, little hearts. Tonight, she wrote like someone who forgot how to fake affection. I didn't respond. Instead, I took another sip of cold coffee, letting it burn the back of my throat. The bitterness matched perfectly. Outside, a distant engine hummed up the street. Headlights cut across the window, briefly painting the kitchen in pale gold. 2:37 a.m. She was home. Through the frosted glass beside the door, I saw her silhouette. Heels in one hand, purse in the other, coat drawn tight. She hesitated before unlocking the door, probably rehearsing whatever lie she'd chosen tonight. The lock clicked, or tried to, then again, and again. A small voice, muffled by the door. "Aaron?" The key's not turning. I closed my eyes, steady breath in. Calm. Always calm, because I'd changed the locks 2 hours ago. I didn't answer, just stood in the shadows of the kitchen, the dim light wrapping around me like armor. She knocked once, soft, then harder. "Aaron, it's freezing. Please open the door." Through the window, I saw her face. Pale, anxious, the night's lies cracking under her makeup. She looked up, and when our eyes met through the glass, her breath hitched. I didn't move, didn't speak. Finally, I stepped forward just enough for her to see me clearly. Her lips parted in relief, but I could see the fear bloom right behind it. "Aaron." My voice came out low, quiet, almost kind. "This house doesn't open for lies anymore." She froze. The silence between us wasn't loud. It was absolute. The car that brought her here was gone. The street was empty. And for the first time in months, I realized I wasn't. The door stayed locked. Her voice cracked through the cold, soft, desperate, trembling. "Aaron, please, I dropped my charger in Carter's car. That's why I said my phone died. Just open the door, we can talk." Talk. That word used to mean connection. Now it just sounded like damage control. I didn't move. I just stood there watching her through the frosted glass. My reflection overlapped hers. Two ghosts in the same window. One waiting for forgiveness, the other already gone. When I finally spoke, my tone was calm, almost clinical. "What's Carter's charger doing in your purse every other night?" She blinked, startled, the question slicing right through her excuses. I don't know what you mean." "Of course you do," I murmured. "I checked the rideshare log, Lena. You stopped at his address before coming here." The color drained from her face. The frost on the window turned her breath into fog. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. "Aaron, you're overreacting. It's not what it looks like. It never is," I said, almost to myself. "Not until it's over." I turned away before she could speak again. Her knocks grew louder, uneven, frantic. But I didn't open the door. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen. Past the counter where she used to leave notes, past the photo wall filled with smiling faces that didn't exist anymore. Every photo now looked like evidence. On the fridge, her favorite magnet still held up a receipt from the diner we used to visit. The date on it was our anniversary, the last time she'd looked at me like I was still her home. I pulled it down, folded it once, and slipped it into my pocket like a memory ready to be archived. By the time her knocking stopped, the house was quiet again. That's when the weight of it hit me. Not anger, not sadness. Just the hollow realization that love doesn't die with betrayal. It suffocates slowly until it forgets how to breathe. Morning arrived gray and thin. The world outside was still wet from last night's frost, and the sunlight looked almost reluctant to touch the house. Lena was gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but she'd left something behind. A scent of perfume hanging near the door and a faint smudge of mascara on the glass. I stared at it for a long moment before wiping it clean. Then I brewed a fresh cup of coffee, sat at the table, and opened my laptop. Not for work, not for architecture, for something more deliberate. If she had chosen deceit, then I'd respond with design. Blueprints weren't just for buildings. They were for demolitions too. I opened a hidden folder labeled Project Meridian. Contained photographs, ones I hadn't planned to use. A trail I'd been quietly collecting for weeks. Screenshots of late-night texts she thought I couldn't see. Bank alerts for purchases she couldn't explain. A hotel invoice from Riverstone Suites, dated on a night she claimed she'd been working late. Each file felt like a brick laid into something inevitable. I wasn't angry while doing it. Anger clouds judgment. I was methodical, detached. Because if there's one thing architects understand, it's that a structure built on lies will always collapse. By the time the sun fully rose, I'd already transferred the joint savings to a separate account and scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. Quiet, efficient, bloodless. At 8:40 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Lena, I'm sorry about last night. Can we meet? Please." Then, another. "Lena, I made a mistake. I'll explain everything." I didn't reply. Instead, I looked around the house, the one I'd designed down to every hinge and beam. It used to feel like a sanctuary. Now it felt like a courtroom, and every object inside was a witness. Her laughter once echoed in these walls. Now it was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. The sound of life moving on without her. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The silence wasn't comforting yet, but it was honest. When I opened them again, I saw something on the counter. A small, silver key she must have left weeks ago. Engraved on it, tiny letters read, L+A. I held it for a moment, then dropped it into the trash. Later that day, as I drove past her office building, I spotted her through the glass lobby. She was smiling at someone, that same practiced, professional smile. To anyone else, she looked fine, composed, polished. But I saw it, the flicker behind her eyes, the same kind of panic that comes when you realize you've been caught before you're ready to confess. I didn't stop. I didn't need to, because revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about control. And I already had that. 3 days passed without a word between us. The house had never been quieter. Even the floors seemed to creak more softly, as if afraid to disturb what lingered in the air, that thin film of betrayal you can't scrub away. Lena tried calling, texting, even showing up once, standing outside with flowers like she was auditioning for redemption. I didn't open the door. I just watched from the upstairs window until she left, her silhouette shrinking down the driveway. I thought indifference would feel like victory. Didn't. It felt like staring at the ruins of something you once built with your bare hands, and realizing you were the one who designed its collapse. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through every room, barefoot on cold wood, tracing memories that no longer belonged to anyone. The kitchen, where she once danced with a glass of wine while dinner burned. The hallway, where her heels echoed after midnight. The bedroom, where silence now had a permanent address. I stopped at her side of the bed. Her pillow still carried the faint scent of her shampoo, and against all logic, I found myself whispering her name like an involuntary prayer. That's when the guilt crept in, quiet but sharp. Maybe I should have confronted her sooner. Maybe there was still something left to salvage. But the rational part of me, the architect, reminded me that you can't rebuild on rotten foundations. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop again, and clicked on the folder titled Evidence. I wasn't looking for closure anymore. I was looking for clarity. And that's when I saw it. An unread email from Mason Clark, Carter's business partner. Subject: confidential financial irregularities. I clicked it open. Aaron, appreciate your discretion. As discussed, Carter's been moving client funds through a shadow account. We've traced several transactions to personal charges, jewelry, hotel stays, luxury dinners. I believe one of those charges lists your wife's name. Attaching receipts. My chest tightened. I scrolled through the attachments, line by line, until I saw it. A receipt from Riverstone Suites, room 914. 2 guests. Company card. Guest name L. Hart. It wasn't just cheating anymore. It was fraud. And her name was inked right next to his. The realization hit like cold steel. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore, it was about exposure. If I went to the company's board, they'd both go down. But if I stayed silent, she'd keep smiling through her lies while I drowned in mine. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't want to ruin her. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to watch your world collapse, one deliberate choice at a time. So I made a decision. No confrontation, no warning, just precision. The next morning I drove downtown, not to her, but to Mason. He looked surprised when I walked into his office. Aaron, I didn't expect you to show up in person. I thought it'd be better this way, I replied. My tone was steady, polite, almost friendly. You wanted documentation. I brought everything. I placed the flash drive on his desk. Every screenshot, every receipt, every time-stamped lie. Mason studied my face, unsure whether he was looking at a victim or a conspirator. You're certain about this? Absolutely, I said. But if this goes public, I want one thing. He raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Make sure the fallout lands where it should. Carter first, then whoever he took down with him. He nodded slowly, understanding exactly what I meant. When I left the building, the sky had turned the color of graphite, heavy and waiting to rain. The city buzzed below like nothing was wrong, but I knew what was coming. That night, Lena called again. I let it ring. Then another text came through. Please, I just need to talk. I think Carter's in trouble. Something's happening at work. I stared at the message for a long time, the irony sinking deep. She was right. Something was happening. By midnight, the company's internal audit had begun. Mason's message came through. It's unfolding. They're both being questioned. You were right about everything. I set the phone down, staring out the window into the storm breaking over the neighborhood. Thunder rolled softly in the distance, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of joy but relief, because the truth was finally doing what I never had to. When morning came, the headlines hit the business feed. Hayes and Mason Realty co-founder suspended amid financial scandal. Underneath, a smaller subhead, Senior Associate under review for misconduct. Lena's name, printed in black and white. I read it once, then again. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. The twist wasn't that she'd betrayed me. It was that I no longer needed to hate her for it. For the first time, I felt something strange. Not vengeance, not triumph. Peace. But peace has a price. And I had just started paying it. The news spread faster than guilt. By the end of the week, Carter Hayes had been suspended pending investigation, and Lena Hart's name was being whispered through the halls of every real estate firm in the city. She didn't know it yet, but the empire she'd built on charm and deceit was already caving in. I thought that watching her fall would feel like justice. But standing in the quiet kitchen that morning, staring at the same mug she'd once used, I felt something else. The faint ache of a man realizing that revenge doesn't repair anything. It only redistributes the pain. My phone buzzed. Lena, please, Aaron. I know you're behind this. Just, please meet me. We can fix this. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked around the house. Every corner still echoing with the ghost of what used to be love. Then I typed back one word. Tomorrow. She was waiting when I arrived. The lobby of Hayes and Mason Realty was colder than I remembered. Polished marble, glass walls, and a silence that carried the tension of a storm that had already passed. Lena stood by the reception desk, pale and small in her beige coat. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse like a lifeline. When she saw me, her eyes flickered with something between hope and panic. Aaron. I didn't respond, just walked toward her, the echo of my shoes bouncing off the marble like a metronome marking the death of a marriage. Can we talk somewhere private? She asked, glancing around at the few employees pretending not to stare. I followed her into her office, or what was left of it. The nameplate on her desk was gone. So was her computer. The emptiness was fitting. She turned to me, her composure cracking. They suspended me. Mason said there's an audit that they found transactions with my name on them. I swear. Aaron, I didn't know Carter was using me like that. I tilted my head. You didn't know you were sleeping with a man who used company funds for your hotel stays? She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't like that. Started as work, then it got complicated. I made mistakes, I know that, but I didn't steal anything. Her voice trembled, and for a moment, I almost saw the woman I used to love. The one who laughed too loudly at old movies and snored softly when she fell asleep on the couch. Almost. Do you know what's worse than cheating? I said quietly, being made to feel crazy for suspecting it. Tears gathered in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lonely, Aaron. You were always working, always distant. I stepped closer. You don't get to blame neglect for deceit. I built this life for us. Every room, every window, every inch of this house you turned into a lie. I designed it for love, and you filled it with betrayal. Her lips parted, but no words came. She sank into the chair, trembling. They're threatening to press charges, Aaron. They said I might lose my license. Carter's gone, he won't even answer my calls. I'm ruined. I stood there watching her crumble, the same way I once did. But where my pain had been silent, hers was loud, messy, public, and irreversible. For a long moment I said nothing. Then, slowly, I placed a folder on her desk. Inside were documents. Everything she needed to understand how deliberate my silence had been. Screenshots, receipts, evidence. She looked up at me, realization dawning in her eyes. You did this. I just told the truth, I said evenly. The truth you kept rewriting. Her shoulders shook. You could have talked to me. I tried. I whispered. For months. You were never listening. The room went still. The only sound was the distant hum of the city below. Then she said something that surprised me. Something small, but honest. I deserve this, don't I? I looked at her, the woman who once promised forever, now reduced to consequence. No one deserves destruction, I said quietly. But you built this one yourself. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my sleeve. Please, tell them I didn't know. I'll quit. I'll walk away. Just don't let them destroy everything. Her grip was trembling. I met her gaze, desperate, wet, human. And for a fleeting second, I almost gave in. Almost. Then I remembered standing at that same door weeks ago, hearing her lie through the lock. The symmetry of it all was almost poetic. You wanted freedom, Lena, I said softly. Now you have it. Her hand fell away. The sound of it, that small, defeated movement, echoed louder than any argument we'd ever had. I left her there, surrounded by the empty space she'd once called power. Outside, the winter air hit like absolution. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindicated. I was empty. And that, somehow, was the purest form of peace I'd ever known. But peace is temporary. And as I looked up at the mirrored glass of the building, I caught my reflection and realized something chilling. When you destroy the person who broke you, you don't get yourself back. You just learn how to live among the ruins. The next morning, rain blurred the world into watercolor. The city looked washed out, drained of edges, like everything had finally surrendered. I sat on the porch steps, coffee in hand, watching water thread down the driveway. I hadn't slept. The night before replayed in my mind like a looped confession I didn't want to hear again. Lena had been right about one thing. Destruction doesn't end when the walls collapse. It echoes. I was beginning to feel it now, the quiet echo of everything I'd done. Then, through the rain, headlights appeared at the end of the street. Slow, hesitant, familiar. Her car. Part of me wanted to go inside, lock the door again, pretend the story had already ended. But I stayed seated because endings, like guilt, find you even when you hide. Lena stepped out, umbrella trembling in her hand. She wasn't the polished woman I'd known. Her hair clung to her face. Mascara bled into her skin like bruises. She clutched an envelope against her chest. She stopped at the foot of the steps. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain did the talking, soft, relentless, cleansing. I signed them, she said finally, voice barely audible above the rain. She held out the envelope. The divorce papers. I didn't move. She climbed one step closer, her eyes red but steady. You won, Aaron. You got your revenge. Her tone wasn't bitter. It was empty. I didn't win, I said quietly. I just stopped losing. She nodded, lips trembling. I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my name. Everyone knows. Mason told them I was part of it. Carter left the city. And she trailed off, eyes searching mine. I know you sent those files. I just don't understand why you couldn't talk to me first. I set my coffee down, looked up at her. The rain blurring her shape, softening her edges. Because every time I tried, you lied prettier than the truth could ever sound. That hit her. She blinked hard, the kind of blink you do when words sting more than they should. I deserved the truth, Aaron, she whispered. So did I. Silence. The world seemed to pause with us. The rain slowed. The street glistened silver. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. One small reminder that life still went on outside our wreckage. She took another step, her shoes sinking into the mud. Do you still hate me? I exhaled slowly. No, her eyebrows furrowed. Like that confused her more than anger would have. I don't hate you, I continued. Hate means I'm still carrying you with me. I've just put you down. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came. She looked small, like grief had hollowed her out and filled the space with shame. I keep replaying that night, she murmured. If I'd just come home earlier or told you the truth, maybe you'd still have lied, I said softly. You didn't fall into this, Lena. You built it, brick by brick. Tears mingled with the rain on her cheeks. I know. I just wish I'd built it with you instead. For a moment, I almost believed the sincerity. The way she said it, raw, broken, sounded like the truth I'd begged for months ago. But it was too late. Truth doesn't resurrect what lies buried. She held out the envelope again. I took it this time. The paper was damp, her signature slightly smudged. As I slipped it inside my jacket, she looked at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not for getting caught. For forgetting who you were." I nodded, swallowing the lump that had been living in my throat since the night she texted me. "My phone died. I used to design homes," I said quietly. "Now I think I just design exits." Her expression broke. A small, painful smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Goodbye, Aaron." She turned to leave, walking slowly down the wet driveway, her figure dissolving into the mist. I watched until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I sat back down, feeling the air grow lighter, as if the house itself exhaled. Inside, everything was still. No perfume, no echoes, no lies. I walked to my drafting table, the one untouched since this began, and opened a fresh sheet of paper. The pencil felt strange in my hand, like holding hope for the first time again. I didn't draw a building. I drew a window, wide, open, facing east. Because for the first time in months, I was finally ready to let light in again. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with trumpets or closure. It slips in quietly, like light under a locked door. Weeks passed. The house, once a mausoleum for broken promises, began to feel alive again. Not louder, not brighter, just mine. Every morning I brewed coffee and sat by the same kitchen window where I used to wait for her headlights. The mug no longer trembled in my hands. The silence no longer mocked me. It had changed shape from punishment to presence. One afternoon, I went into the attic. Dust motes floated through the sunlight like soft ghosts. Boxes, old photo albums, the skeletons of a marriage that no longer haunted me. All stacked neatly, waiting for permission to fade. I found our wedding album. The corners curled, the colors fading slightly. There we were, two people smiling like the future was something we could design. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger. Just a small, bittersweet awareness that not every promise broken is a tragedy. Sometimes it's just life insisting on truth. A month later, I got a letter handwritten, unadorned. No perfume, no apologies, just ink and rain stains on the paper. "I've left the city, starting over somewhere no one knows me. I hope you found peace. You were right, silence says what words never could. L." I folded the letter once, placed it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Time moved forward with quiet precision. I started designing again, not for clients but for myself. Smaller spaces, honest ones. The first sketch I finished after everything wasn't a building at all. It was a home, a simple one. Sunlight spilling through open windows, no walls thick enough to hide secrets. I didn't realize until later that I'd drawn it on the back of an old blueprint, one that once belonged to our dream house. Funny how some foundations can be reused after all. Sometimes at night, I'd sit on the porch with the lights off, listening to the rain. And in that rhythm, those endless drops against the roof, I heard something that felt like forgiveness. Not for her, for myself. Because vengeance is easy. Letting go is the real architecture of freedom. One evening, Mason called. He said the investigation had ended, Carter's assets frozen. Lena cleared of legal charges, but blacklisted in the industry. She'd vanished from the city completely. I thanked him and hung up. For a long moment, I stared out the window at the reflection of my own face. The man who looked back wasn't angry anymore. He was older, quieter, rebuilt. Grief doesn't always announce its departure. Sometimes it just forgets to visit. I sold the house 2 months later. The realtor, a young woman with kind eyes, asked if I was sure. "Every brick here has a story," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm ready to let it go." I didn't take much with me. A few clothes, a camera, a notebook. The rest I left behind. The ghosts, the echoes, the man who once waited by the door. My new home sat at the edge of a small coastal town, where the air always smelled like salt and renewal. The walls were white, the floors creaked softly, and the windows faced the sea. Each morning, I walked to the shoreline and let the wind erase yesterday from my skin. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was peace in motion. And that was enough. Sometimes I still think about her. Not with longing, just curiosity. Where she went. Whether she found the version of herself she kept chasing through other people's arms. But I never reach out. Some stories end better unfinished. One night, the sky burned with thunderclouds, and I stood at my window watching lightning bloom across the horizon. The reflection in the glass was the same as that night months ago, except this time I didn't look hollow. I whispered something, barely audible over the rain. Thank you for leaving, because her betrayal had given me what her love never could, an ending honest enough to begin again. The rain eased. The world outside shimmered with new light, and for the first time in years, I didn't see loss when I looked at my reflection. I saw space, empty, quiet, ready, and that silence, that perfect, merciful silence, finally sounded like freedom.